Remember back in May, remember we told you about LA District Attorney George Gascon, who was in danger of losing his job? Conservatives there tried to recall him twice, but after all that rigmarole, Gascon will be staying in office. He was elected in the wake of George Floyd's murder, despite the fact that he was once a cop. Gascon won the support of activists by promising to reduce incarceration rates and reform the criminal justice system. But conservatives soon targeted the new DA as soft on crime, and they blamed him for the county's rising crime rates. Indeed, LA has seen more homicides and violent crimes since Gascon took office, but it's not clear at all that his attempts to reduce incarceration are to blame for that. A point that Gascon himself made while appearing on this show back in December of 2021.
What I'm trying to do is not something that actually is against public safety. To the contrary, I believe that reform and public safety actually work well together. And we have seen the reverse. You know, in this county, we had a 27% increase in violent crime during a period of time where we incarcerated 4 times the rate that we did in San Francisco and higher rates at almost every other county in the state. So there is no correlation between over-incarceration and safety.
And it appears that LA's voters may agree with him because opponents needed over 550,000 signatures to get Gascon's recall on the ballot, but they came up nearly 50,000 signatures short. So he's safe. But Gascon's progressive counterpart in San Francisco, former DA Chesa Boudin, wasn't so lucky. There, the conservative effort to brand Boudin as soft on crime worked, and he was officially recalled and replaced earlier this summer. 2 progressive California DAs, 2 recall efforts, 1 success and 1 failure. What's the takeaway as activists continue to try and reform our broken criminal justice system? And as George Gascon lives to see another day as DA, has his approach changed at all? Let's ask him. George Gascon joins me now. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. So it turns out that LA didn't want to go the way of San Francisco. What was the key to beating this recall effort in LA, in your view?
Yeah, you know, Matty, I think that during my election, I was very strongly supported by many different parts of our community, and that support continue from the very beginning of my administration. I think that we were able to continue to galvanize people, and those that were seeking the recall went way out of their way. You know, they spent a lot of money. They lied to people. They did all kinds of. We now know actually they engaged in fraudulent activity in collecting the signatures, falsifying signatures. But even after all that, and even after, you know, very low threshold, people may say, well, 500,000 is a lot of signatures. Well, it isn't if you consider this is a 10 million plus people county. The reality is they could not get through the threshold because the people in this community want to have a criminal justice system that is more equitable, more fair. Yes, people want safety, but they recognize that safety and reform are not antagonistic to one another.
So the recall isn't happening, but I'm sure your critics will still point to worrying crime statistics in your jurisdiction. For example, they will point to homicide being at a 10-year high. It's increased 50% since just 3 years ago. What is your response to those critics?
Well, look, I mean, first of all, it is concerning. You know, I will be the first to admit that I worry a great deal about violent crime, and that's why we're doing so many things in our communities, working with our prosecutors, you know, going after violent offenders. But, you know, the other part of this is that this is a national problem. In fact, just surrounding counties to us that are, they have very conservative prosecutors, their per capita violent crime is actually higher than ours. So the point that needs to often is hard to make, especially with all the fear mongering, is that, quite frankly, the work that a prosecutor does on a day-to-day basis is not really going to influence the daily increases or reductions in crime. But what the work that we do does have a tremendous impact in the quality of life in our community over a longer period of time, when we break down communities by unnecessary longer periods of incarceration, when we over-incarcerate, when we over-criminalize. That really is where we have a tremendous impact. You know, the day-to-day swings in crime numbers going up or down, whether you're a right-wing or a moderate or you're a progressive prosecutor, quite frankly, you're going to have very little impact on a daily basis. And we see that across the board.
So I want to play you a clip from Fox. Have a listen to some of the rhetoric.
The fact that we had the highest increase in the murder rate on history, that's the direct result of Democratic policies, whether it's defunding the police or eliminating bail systems or cutting sentences for drug dealers. Despite what the Democrats are saying now, the American people know that the Democrats are, always have been, soft on crime, and that is endangering Americans.
That was Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas on Fox, kind of pushing the standard conservative narrative, which is crime's out of control, Democrats aren't doing enough to stop crime, progressive prosecutors are out of control. How should Democratic candidates, in your view, going into the midterms, where crime is a big issue, not just with conservatives, but with liberals too, how should Democratic candidates, in your view, combat that GOP talking point about rising crime, crime out of control?
I think, look, first of all, I think we need to push back, right? We cannot lose our center of gravity. And I worry that some Democrats are running scared and are forgetting. The reality is that they have been, in fact, very recently, there was a publication that came out that, you know, violent crime and crime increases in red jurisdictions has gone up proportionally much more higher than in blue jurisdictions. And those numbers are out there. Now, I understand that in the political campaign trail, you know, statistics sometimes don't matter. But, you know, we have to be very thoughtful about the things that we do and the things that we say. We cannot go back to the 1980s and 1990s. We cannot go back to the dates of the, you know, the war on drugs, the war on our community. Yes, we have to be concerned with the increases in crime. Yes, we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can, but we have to do it in a way that is smart, that is thoughtful, and we have to be better communicators than we often are. And I include myself in this. We have to be out there, but we have to call things as they are. I fear that if we try to outdo Republicans, we will never succeed. And all we're doing is we're going down a rabbit hole.
So one last question, changing tack. You're the DA in LA, of course. Some state and local prosecutors across the country have become household names thanks to their efforts to try and hold former President Trump and his allies to account. If you were New York AG Tish James or Fulton County DA Fani Willis, would you be going after Trump in the same way they have, more aggressively?
Look, I think that they're doing the right things, and obviously I only know what's in the media. But, you know, white-collar crimes, which is just really what it amounts to, or public integrity crimes, require a tremendous amount of effort. These are lengthy, complicated cases. A lot of resources go into it. But, you know, we have an obligation to make sure that we're holding everybody accountable. Everybody should be held to a same standard. And I believe that these are prosecutors that are doing the work that they were elected to do by their community. Certainly, if those cases were to come our way, we would look at them very similarly. And I commend them for the courage. I know how difficult it is to go after someone that is powerful and politically influential. It's not an easy job.